want to talk today about Mary Magdalene and her connection to Isis and whether she was an Isis priestess or trained in the Egyptian mystery schools, or at least had awareness of the Egyptian mystery wisdoms, because there was a lot of commonality with the wisdom from these Isis and Egyptian lineages and Mary Magdalene and the wisdom that she taught and the teachings that she carried forward. So today I want to talk about what those commonalities are and speak to why I believe Mary Magdalene was an Isis priestess. So firstly, I want to talk about miraphors and how they carried an understanding of working with the sacred oils, and how both Isis priestesses and Egyptian mystery schools and Mary Magdalene are connected through the understanding of and how to work with the holy oils. So miraphors, or the myrrh bearers, comes from a Greek word called myrophos, which means the one who carried myrrh. So it was a title given to a priestess who had an understanding of how to work with the sacred oils. And in ancient Egyptian culture, you can see in all the temple walls there are large jars of sacred oil. So it's obvious that working with the sacred oils was a very prominent ritual aspect to the ancient Egyptians. They would anoint the gods, they would anoint the pharaohs who were moving through spiritual initiations. The practice of anointing was used not only for death and preparing the body for afterlife or resurrection, but also through spiritual transformations and spiritual initiations and rites of passage. And both Mary Magdalene and Isis priestesses had an understanding of how to support people with the holy oils through these processes. And in all the iconography of Mary Magdalene throughout all the churches and cathedrals, what do you see again and again? Well, you see her holding an alabaster jar, and this jar signifies how she carries the understanding of working with the sacred oils. And she was the prominent figure, the most prominent figure in Jesus' resurrection. She was the one who came to the tomb with the holy oils and anointed his body, and she was the one that he first appeared to in his resurrection. And in the same way, Isis is also the most significant figure in the Egyptian stories and mysteries of resurrection around Osiris. And so they both also carry this deep understanding of divine union and resurrection, and carry a similar archetype in that way. And I love that when I went to Egypt, of course, I have a special connection with Mary Magdalene and Isis on a personal level, but when I went to Egypt for the first time, I actually was shopping in the little shops, and I found all these alabaster jars, and I actually learned in that moment that a lot of the alabaster actually comes from Egypt. So in all these images of Mary Magdalene holding the alabaster jar, where do you think she got this jar from? Most likely Egypt, because a lot of the alabaster comes from these lands. And where does most of the sacred oils grow? In the Middle East. And how would she have had access to these oils? Well, she must have had access to the Egyptian mystery schools, or possibly even the other more ancient mystery schools throughout the Middle East. What's also interesting is that the Nag Hammadi, where the Gnostic Gospels were found in Egypt, were the texts that Mary Magdalene had the most significance in, where her teachings were most understood, where her role as a significant figure in Christian mysticism was shown in evidence, in manuscript. And so whether this means that she actually lived or went to Egypt, or whether this just means that in Egypt they had a special respect and worked with her teachings in the early Christian communities in Egypt, it's obvious that both of these lineages were crossed over, not only in the linear timeline as early Christianity rose during the end of the Isis worship, but also much of the appropriation and teachings of Christianity comes from ancient Egypt or early pagan traditions.